Goody, goody, here it comes.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show.
You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh my God, don't stop now!
With your hosts, Brian, John, and Elaine.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Coddington, joined by my fellow co-hosts and filmmakers, John and Lane Woolscroft.
Guys, I am so excited to talk about this movie this week that I don't even have anything smart-ass to say.
I know. We have a really great episode this week. I'm excited.
It is crazy, the movie that we're going to be able to review today.
Yeah.
Really crazy.
Something that we've all loved and that we've all cherished as kind of a landmark piece of the cinematic landscape that really gets overlooked, you know, and
it's misunderstood.
Misunderstood. That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Definitely.
So we're going to
extremely misunderstood.
We're going to be addressing that, but
I'm super glad we get to break it down in the context of, you know, its place in cinematic history
and the cinematic pedagogy that really makes it one of the finest films of its generation, or really any generation, in my opinion. I mean, I might be on my own,
and that's rare for you, John, because you usually don't feel that way.
Right. Yeah. We're on episode 96, by the way.
Oh, yeah. 96, 96.
Forgot to bring that
up. I think we're a little excited here.
Yeah, we just jumped the gun just a little.
So episode 96, and today we're going to be talking about the quintessential cinema classic known as Freddy Got Fingered. I prefer to refer to it as Frederick Got Fingered.
I mean, that's...
You're giving it its due credit, like its due respect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Full name.
Well, so many people have been dismissive of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and I think it's the Freddy part that...
It's the Freddy part. Yeah. You know, it's not Freddy, it's Frederick.
Right, because, I mean, if you're going to talk about the coming-of-age story, you know, of a guy finding his place in the world where he does go from, you know, being a lesser man to, you know, a man ready to take his real steps in the world, like, you have to use the full name.
Frederick.
I think it's a shame that, you know, the filmmakers kind of overlooked that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the filmmakers really look at the flagrant abuse that people have to deal with, but you know,
You're really getting ahead of yourself.
I know,
John.
I know. Yeah. Well, we're gonna break it down.
We're really excited. Okay.
Well, we got a crazy news story.
This is crazy.
Yeah, we do have a crazy news story. Actually,
yeah, and I've done, unfortunately, a little too much research on this because I've seen probably more than I ever would want to. But guys, Patrick Duffy has a sex tape.
What?
Really?
Yep.
Nuh-uh.
No, that's bullshit.
No, it just recently leaked. It's from from what it looks like high 8, like, you know, before DV tape. So
really,
it's clearly shot. It looks like California, like a big bedroom. Looks like his place. You know, I'm thinking like 98, 99, something like that.
So this was like,
well, that wouldn't have been that long ago compared to his fame, really. I mean, right? I mean, we are talking about like the star of Step by Step, right?
Well, yes,
Lane.
And Dallas.
Lane. It's funny you should mention that, because in the sex tape, you can clearly hear first the Step by Step theme and like an episode. Like if you're a fan of the show,
wait,
this guy bones to his own show.
He's watching his own show.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Apparently, the woman in the thing must just be a fan. Like she's nobody,
just a groupie.
Really?
Step by Step.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I hope you
like
can't...
a step-by-step ring rat. You know what I mean? They must hang around the show.
A ring rat.
Come on.
That's interesting. You can't see the woman, can you?
Oh, yeah.
Like her face?
Oh, yeah.
Whoever
leaked it, I don't think really
It's
cares.
not Suzanne Summers, is it?
No, not Suzanne. I'm surprised she doesn't have her own, but no, it's not Suzanne.
Oh, weird.
But
I heard her sex tape, I think, is with a Bowflex or that thing. She was the Thigh Master.
Oh,
yeah.
Suzanne Summers. Yeah, she had a few things. Yeah, Thigh Master, I think, was one of them.
Thigh Master sex tape.
But if you watch this thing, it's like 45 minutes long.
Should I be mad you watched so much?
Now I gotta say,
tape,
did you watch the full 45 minutes?
Oh yeah, I had to do my research, if you want to call it that. But there's a point where
could you critique Patrick Duffy's performance?
Well, he does a lot of flexing, and there's not even a mirror, so he like looks to the wall flexing, but it's just a regular bedroom wall. So I don't know if he's just imagining a mirror is there or something.
Wow.
So kind of like Patrick Bateman in
like he's doing
American
like Hulk
Psycho.
Hogan, Hulkamania poses.
Ew.
While he's going to town. But the best part is about 23 minutes in, he has to excuse himself because he says like there's something I'm not trusting right now, And at first I thought like he heard a noise in the house, but I really think he went to the bathroom because he's gone a long time, and she seems kind of concerned, but he comes back and says, like, it's subtitled by whoever puts up, like TMZ or whoever did. They put little subtitle at the bottom and says, "Got that out, let's rock and roll," he says when he gets back.
Wow.
No.
That's
No.
that's absurd.
He doesn't really say that.
Is
does
it
he?
so it's like a fart he couldn't trust?
If you rewind it a little and you listen, it does sound like, they're taking a little liberty on how they hear it, but it does sound like he does say, "Got it out, let's rock and roll."
That's
Wow.
so random. Well, I mean, his
Did he
team,
pause?
like,
Did he pause his step-by-step episode before when he went to the bathroom?
Oh no, it must have been on some kind of loop. Like, I don't know if it was like the early days of DVD or something and he had play all,
Okay.
but it never stops
That's
the whole
crazy.
time. Because the episode's only like 30 minutes, but it goes the entire run of the tape.
Maybe
Well,
it's
have
the
his-
dailies.
have his people like commented or anything on it, or did this just break today?
It just broke today.
And no comment from like Duffy himself. Like you'd
Not-
think he'd be super pissed.
Nothing that I saw. But the weirdest part was the video starts with her on the bed, and he walks out from behind the camera like he's operating it.
Okay.
About 35 minutes in, it zooms.
Really?
So somebody else is in the room.
Wow.
I bet. Was it the Cody guy from Step by Step?
Oh my God, Cody.
It could very well be
That's
Cody.
so funny.
Yeah. But yeah,
Jeez.
so
Wow.
John, that's fucking nuts.
I mean, a lot of weird positions, a little bit of crying. So it's not a good look for Duffy. But I know it probably
Did he
should be something we
use?
should bring up.
Did
on the
he
show,
use his tears as lubricant?
oh
they-
my God.
Well, she kind of just holds him at like the 39, 40 minute mark while he like sobs. It's quiet crying. He's not like bawling, but you can tell that she's just stroking his hair from behind while he cries a little bit. And obviously this is not something he wanted to get out.
No, obviously not.
I mean,
obviously not.
And you watched every gory detail. Fuck.
I mean, I don't know. Part of me finds
And you
this hilarious.
analyzed it was in high 8. I mean, Jesus
yeah,
Christ.
right.
Well,
all
well,
right,
it looks
well,
like what they do with horror movies now, like where they look like they purposely use VHS tape or high 8 to make them look like,
Yeah, it's weird that it's
snuff
not-
films because 60 millimeter cost too much. But it's funny to a degree, but also it's like, oh God, this is this man's like very bizarre, intimate, sexual
This is
situation that I don't know if I should really be watching.
his Alec Baldwin hamburger video. That's what this is.
wasn't that Hasselhoff?
Was it
Eating the
Hasselhoff?
hamburger on the floor?
Yes, it
Yeah.
was. Yes, it was. You're right. You're right.
Well, thanks for that disgusting update,
So,
John.
Wow.
so it's all over the internet. So if you want to Google, Patrick Duffy sex tape, it should come up right away.
Yeah,
So,
dude.
if you dare, if you really want to see this.
Yeah.
I mean, he's back. He's still in shape back then. So
Good for him.
yeah.
Good for him. I mean, not good for him that the sex tape obviously came out, but I mean, good for him that he's in shape.
I can't tell if I'm the better man for it or traumatized from seeing it. So
A little bit of both.
little both. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we're going to take a little bit of a break and shoot it over to our friends at the Epicast Network. And when we come back, we will be diving into the cinema classic known as Freddy Got Fingered.
Hey, yo, I'm Ed Bailey. I'm here with
Dave Bracey.
and we are the Drinking Partners Podcast on Epicast Network. Fucked it up. Make sure you check us out, man. We got the Comedy Fuel, which is really supposed to be beer fueled comedy podcast, but
Craft Fuel Beer Potter. Craft Beer Fuel Pot. Motherfucker,
right.
man. I'm gonna have to write that down.
What up?
Fuel.
Craft Fuel
Hold on,
Beer
hold on.
Podcast.
Yeah, Craft Fuel. No,
Craft
Fuel.
Brew Filled Craft Beer Fuel Podcast. Okay. Craft Brew Fuel. Craft Beer Fuel Comedy. Those are not 4 words that you say normally. All right. Craft Brew. You knew that I was gonna fuck up. You knew. Craft Beer Fuel Comedy Podcast. All right, so Craft Beer Fuel Comedy Podcast on.
You can find us on epicastnetwork.com/partnerspod. You can find us at partnerspod on Facebook, Twitter, and IG. And you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Libsyn under Drinking Partners.
Yo, if you ain't heard and if you don't know, Drinking Partners is the crew, Epicast is the family. Make sure you check us out, man.
And we're back. Those mentions from our friends over the Epicast Network, specifically the Drinking Partners podcast. Definitely check them out and the other podcasts from the Epicast Network at epicastnetwork.com.
I never get to drink with them.
I know. I want to drink with them.
Yeah, we
That'd
should.
Be awesome.
We should.
They're really nice guys.
I think I'm a drinking witness.
Not a partner. You're just a witness.
Not a partner.
Yeah. So this week, as we mentioned at the top of the show, we have the cinematic classic Frederick Got Fingered.
Now, let's give this movie its due respect from basically a lot of audience and critics are not kind to this movie.
No.
Mm-mm.
But, we've done a lot of time from our understanding of how to properly break down the context of a movie from top to bottom. And we've really, realized that this is not only one of the best films of the 90s, like I would put it in the top 10.
It's
if
in
not top
2000s,
5,
though.
or
Early 2000s.
Yeah,
early
it's true.
2000s.
It's
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
So even if we go by that decade, let's say, the aughts, like 2000 to 2010, one of the best films of that period.
Sure.
But possibly one of the greatest films of all time, just in its transgressive and subversive nature, and how they really say true genius is everything that comes before it seems irrelevant, and everything that comes after it kind of copies it.
Right.
And really, this film, if you really get to the nuts and bolts of it, had its pulse on just groundbreaking cinema, top
Absolutely.
to bottom.
Absolutely.
So let's take a look at some of the salient techniques of Frederick Got Fingered. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the movie is Freddy Got Fingered. That's Brian's due respect to the
Sure.
film.
Yes,
Sure.
to Sir Thomas Green.
Right.
Well, unfortunately, he's not a sir yet.
No, I mean, but you
Well,
don't
only
get that
English
until
can
you're
get knighted,
older.
though, right?
Yeah, maybe. That's
Well,
actually. I'm
is
trying to think
there-
of everyone who's knighted, and
He's
they're all British.
He's Canadian. Can he be knighted?
Oh, maybe.
Can he be knighted?
he
Oh,
can.
yeah, because I was thinking about a Presidential Medal
Yeah.
of Freedom, but he probably can't even get that.
No,
If he's
no.
Canadian-
But
if he's
I think
Canadian, he can.
I think he will eventually get knighted as Sir Thomas Green.
And they might even just have to make an exception in this case. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because of his contribution to the
Absolutely.
entertainment community.
Absolutely, the man's a genius. Let's be honest here. So Freddy Got Fingered, as the layman calls it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Released in 2001. This one was a pre 9/11 film.
Yeah, this was released in April, so I think that when looking at the the breakdown of its context in cinema, I think it's really important to note that it's pre 9/11.
Absolutely.
Because, you couldn't make a movie like this today.
No.
The elements of anarchy they seem so aggressive and they seem so violent,
It's bold, it's controversial, and in a lot of ways, when you say that there were two things that really made America woke in 2001, and that was the unfortunate terrorist attacks in September, but also Freddy Got Fingered, I feel would be up there in terms of, wow, this is who we are and this is what we could be.
Well, I
after
mean,
seeing something of
I
that
feel like
nature.
that's kind of a tall order. I mean, you are comparing, a very profound event to at the end of the day, what is a movie? Now, I think its greater context to our culture is certainly significant.
Absolutely.
I don't know that I would quite scale it like that.
Well, I've never seen a movie that so boldly took a look at who we are and where we're going.
Right. And,
You know,
and I mean,
yeah.
like I said, the contribution to culture and cinema can't be overstated, but like I said, I wouldn't quite put it on par with, with something, that profoundly affected our country. What I'm saying is because it was a pre 9/11, objet d'art, if you will. It's just the elements therein are just kind of a little bit differently taken, and like I said, I think it's amazing that the film did get made, because I don't think you could make it today because people would just misinterpret, and in a post 9/11
Well, they
world,
misinterpreted at the time.
Well, I mean, and like we said, the critics weren't kind because they just didn't understand.
Now for the uninitiated laymans that listen to us, what is an objet d'art?
So, I mean, I would just say that it's, a piece of art that is both, deeply rooted in having a strong auteur, a strong, author, if you will. In this case, Tom Green, he wrote and directed.
Yes.
So, this is something that would be, solely his contribution. He has a strong narrative voice, and has a strong message, to give to the world. So as far as that goes, I would say, considering this an objet d'art, it elevates it, makes it more than just a film. Again, like I said, its cultural implications are very important in this case.
Now we could talk about the film in a grander scale.
Sure.
In its relation to the time period that it came out. But let's start to get into some of the nitty gritty
Okay.
of this film.
Sorry,
John, you had a
did you have
comment?
something, John?
Yeah, well, I just think it's so brilliant how the film opens of basically the ennui of everyone encapsulated through Tom Green as he skateboards through a mall, really capturing the spirit of the decade that ended. But he's so far ahead in advance of knowing where we're going. But does Tom have some greater insight into, the fragile male ego and just what we're looking at with our culture now with Time's Up and all the movements and Black Lives Matter? Like, you could trace it back to this movie and this moment. And if you really look deeper into this movie, really just pull back the layers, it's shocking how much he saw the future.
Well, too, I mean, when you look at it through this lens, you start with the controlled chaos of, the animations, because in this, Tom Green's character is an animator, aspiring animator. And so when you start with that chaos of, the world at basically at cultural war with itself, and then you go to this scene where he's in the mall, he doesn't discriminate in this case. Like he hits everybody, because as he's going through the mall, he has no regard for what's around him. I feel like that kind of blindness and that readiness to get to the goal and to get to, equality and sameness. I think that's kind of what you were saying, with like all the movements and everything that we see now, that's something that they alluded to at the time, because he's passing everybody. It doesn't matter if they're female, male, black, white, whatever. He's definitely going through on his skateboard,
right?
Traversing this, this rough terrain. I mean, he even goes down an escalator, which I think really speaks to classism in our country. And to go from the top to the bottom, like, really speaks to the idea that, a lot of times people have to work jobs that they don't want to, but it's about the journey to get to somewhere else.
I think another point too is the beginning gives us a peek behind the veil of the mind of the genius known as Gordy.
Right,
Okay?
and that's Tom Green's character name.
That's right, his character. His character's name is Gordy. And we're first seeing his creations. Okay, he's X-ray cat and banana with a boss and a bag of baboon eyes and sauce.
And how perfect is that? The idea of being able to see through something to really see, who's on the other side. It's very Freudian when you really break down the Sigmund Freud was the first person.
And he
really,
even has limitations.
Yeah,
he can only see
himself.
through wood.
Mm-hmm.
He is not all encompassing. He's not omniscient.
Well, and
he can only see through wood.
Seeing through wood, how Freudian is that? I mean,
Absolutely.
That's a double entendre in and of itself.
Well,
Absolutely.
there's tons of things about the fragile nature of masculinity in this movie. The banana, the sausages later,
The bag of baboon eyes.
exactly.
And,
So,
and I mean, there's actual phalluses in this film, with the horse and the elephant. There's lots of remnants of, fragile masculinity, toxic masculinity. Like, these symbols are everywhere in the film.
say,
We can't
hey
avoid
guys,
them.
Hey guys, sorry, the world's changing, and here's Tom to show you the way.
Exactly.
And now the other thing too, and this is another side of the complexity of this movie. We haven't even gotten that far into it. We're only in the first scene.
Well, there's just so much to
I
read into
also like to think that, Gordy is skateboarding through consumerism at its greatest. Is he a socialist hero? I mean, I think that's an idea. He's the everyman.
Well, like I said, I mean,
Right?
I really think that scene is a comment on class.
Class, I think also economic policy at the time.
Yeah, I
Kind of
see that.
Marxism.
A little
Like,
bit. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
he is,
if you read
he
Karl
is the
Marx,
socialist hero.
If you read Karl Marx and then you see Freddy Got Fingered, you're
It'll
I get
make
it.
more
You can make
sense.
the
It,
connection.
it really will. It really will.
So
then,
we have the classic hero's journey, kind of a Joseph Campbell archetype where he has to go off to appease not only his father but himself in a journey of self-discovery,
Right.
and an attempt to change the world through art, you know?
right.
Yeah.
And so it's almost meta in that sense where he's changing the world through the art of this movie, but he wants to do it as his character in the movie as well.
Right. And before I forget, let me just comment on this because I thought this was so interesting. So when he gets through the mall, he goes out to some kind of port where
It is-
buses are there to pick him up.
A bus depot.
Yeah. And so it's interesting because this next scene really speaks to deep nihilism, I think, because he has a bus ticket. He's ready to go, but then his parents give him a car. They give him the LeBaron, thus making the bus tickets obsolete. The bus ticket he would have purchased, and I mean, just what speaks more to like the nihilism and the borderline pointlessness of any journey in life, because you never know, you may buy a bus ticket, but a LeBaron is waiting right around the corner. I mean, isn't that just like the most perfect comment on life?
We all want a LeBaron.
We all want the LeBaron of life. I mean, and absolutely. I think that's just a beautifully laid metaphor for us to interpret.
And without the car, he wouldn't have had, and I mean, this is more for the audience because his character's 28, but he wouldn't have had the sexual discovery moment of when he comes across the horse.
That's true.
And by essentially creating the horse's ejaculate for him, not to be crude, but the movie is willing to take those bold chances. We have to bring up what the movie brings up.
Sure, of course.
He's saying, this is life, and this is how life is
and
made.
We're confronted with life, and I think that not shying away from that imagery, is really a rare treat for the intellectual viewer because, we have to face what we don't want to see,
There is one point I do want to make before we go any further, and that is that the bus depot scene also gives us a peek at the social dynamics of the family unit.
That's true. Okay? Everyone's there. His brother and his parents.
To his brother, Freddy, also known as Frederick, his dad, and his mother. And in this scene, we're given a peek at, he thinks that he is the number one son because his father, even though he disapproves of him, has also given him this veneer of superiority to his younger brother, Freddy, by giving him the LeBaron that has a license plate that clearly is etched with number one son.
Yeah, and I think that and his father's played, famously by Rip Torn, but I think that the father's
award-winning actor, Rip Torn.
Yeah, and I think that the idea that he is both, warm and cold in his affections to Freddy, I mean, that just really speaks to the, father of son dynamic in America, where sometimes, we do see that men are afraid to show their emotions. They're afraid to show love, and I think that the way that their relationship plays out over time is something that really like almost anybody can relate to, daddy, would you like some sausage? Like that makes perfect sense to me. Yes. So it's at this point that, Gordy encounters his odyssey, if you will. And ventures it's a hero's
forth.
journey.
It really is.
That's what it is.
Like the Iliad and like the Odyssey and the
he
works
drives,
of Homer. He drives to Los Angeles.
From Seattle or is it Portland?
From Portland.
From Portland.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes,
that's
from Portland.
right. My mistake.
And he travels to the cheese sandwich factory.
Oh, but Brian, you're missing a huge part.
Am I missing? What am I missing?
Well, he runs into that deer on the road, remember?
Well, that's on the way back.
Oh, is that on the way back? Oh my gosh! I love this movie so much.
He encounters the horse.
Right, we talked about that. The
Fallacy.
confrontation of life and the confrontation of self. Got it. Okay.
And he jacks off the horse.
That's right.
Not to be crude, but
no. But I mean, it is what it is. The film challenges us in that way.
Absolutely.
So I'm sorry, the cheese sandwich factory. You're totally right.
John, you had a comment?
Well, just the cheese factory. Obviously there are folds to the bread, cheese, bread, like that. Just as there are folds to life, but it's the convention that Freddy can't accept. Like he is a free spirit.
This is Gordy, not Freddy.
Or excuse me, yeah, sorry, Gordy. But you kind of get a sense of like Thomas Wolfe of just electric Kool-Aid acid test in some of his finest works of just that free spirit. It reminds me a lot of at the end of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest when Chief throws the water fountain out the window and he runs on to self-discovery and self-nature. And that's what Gordy is. Like he cannot be inhibited by any of society's conventions.
He is the socialist hero.
Yeah, and not in an anarchist way. Like,
no.
As it has layers as a sandwich, so does his unconventional methods of approaching society, jobs, that kind of thing. Yeah. And it's really layered, just like a sandwich.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's important to know at this time that he decides to encounter the cheese helmet and the giant sausage.
Once again,
Ding Dong.
Another phallic symbol where he's saying that we not only should we not be scared of our bodies, but we also that it's not all men are based upon is the size of their phallic regions. And he says that so many men are so fragile in their masculinity that they have to throw their penis around metaphorically. He's literally doing it by hitting people with this fake penis, saying, why can't we all just become one instead of, an aggressive man versus a subversive woman?
Well, again, too, I mean, we see the elements and, the metaphors that they represent, of costuming, of the mask, who's to say that your masculinity doesn't wear a mask? When you put something phallic over your own penis, that's costuming, you're hiding, what you feel inside, and it does speak a little bit to male posturing, I think, because obviously, I mean, nobody would have, the sausage like as an actual size, like he's being,
no, this is of ridiculous proportion.
Yeah, I mean, like this is the art de carnaval, the spectacle,
that is the word I was thinking of.
And his choice of the words ding dong, basically what he's saying there, he's purposely picking comical ways of referring to the genitalia to say this is so absurd. Yeah, like when we become naked, we should all be one.
And and two, using onomatopoeias, is that what they're called?
Yes.
When it's like a sound.
Yes.
I mean, like he is saying, listen to not just the words, but their meaning.
Listen to the ding and the dong.
3 words: free association poetry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think we've analyzed this scene enough. Now we're then introduced to the real reason that Gordy has traveled to Los Angeles.
It's true.
And that is to become an animator. So he scopes out the first animation studio that he does see, Radioactive Animation.
What's so brilliant is his actual wife is the secretary here.
And he was briefly married to Drew Barrymore.
Lady Drew Barrymore.
Yeah. And how self-reflexive is that he's willing to say that when you're married to, a lot of people would say genius, that you, even as another famous person, have to take a back seat. You're like my secretary, even though you deserve so much more. And for him to put that out there, to have the bravery to say, unfortunately, this is how society will deem you next to me. That takes a man who is very aware of
self-aware.
Oneself. Yeah,
Self-aware. Well, and two, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I mean, they have Secretary's Awareness Day, and if you look at the office, like they're the heart of the office. They know everything that's going on. So when you say like you're the secretary of my heart, you're really saying you're the heart of my heart. That I think that's an expression of love in and of itself, and I think that that's important to note as well.
So Gordy, he is able to use his superior genius to outwit the guard by yelling Japan forward. We're not quite sure what that means. What do you guys think Japan 4 is? Because it comes up later in the film.
It does.
To me, it's obvious. It's a Pearl Harbor reference.
You think so?
Yeah.
I could see that.
I think it's a context to Rip Torn's generation and how, they turned a blind eye to Japanese internment camps and things of that nature and how there was racism and sexism. And he's saying, Japan 4, what has happened to us.
Right. And two, I mean, for a while, the U.S. wasn't for Japan. And to turn that back on its head, again, I think it's so crucial.
Better way than how I put it. Yeah.
I think it's so crucial that this is in, this very expansive place of wealth, because there was, a huge disparity in those times between, the treatment of Americans and then the treatment of, Japanese American citizens. So I think that having it put in there was a beautiful element, just to remind us of the injustices, because we can walk away from them in time, but in our souls, we shouldn't.
And we're not that far removed from the Japanese Renaissance and the world business
really,
of the 1980s.
We really aren't.
We're not.
No, that's true. So I think that having it in that scene is crucial.
And this moves to my favorite scene because it's so expertly shot. That, I have heard that Tom might have also had a big hand in the cinematography as well. A little way George Lucas really was directing a lot of Empire and Jedi.
Right.
They said that Tom also did a lot of the cinematography as well.
Okay.
And in the restaurant scene, when he comes in dressed like an officer, I thought to myself, what does this mean when he's approaching, the executive of
because
this
it's an unusual choice of outfit. It's not a modern cop costume.
No, it's an English Bobby costume.
It isn't, and I think that can't go unnoticed.
No, not at all.
And and I think it's his way of kind of mocking the fascism of our country.
The Thatcherism,
yeah,
if you will.
Exactly.
Yes, yes.
And
this is not that far removed from the Margaret Thatcher Reaganomics era.
It's true, and this is This movie is nothing but if not a comment on economic theory, on class, on all the financial perils that we fall into, as a country.
Yes, yes.
And then he has a situation where this executive basically tries to control him and stifle him.
And this is the animation guy?
This is Mr. Dave Davidson.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, right.
Yes.
And I think it's interesting. Dave Davidson, certainly not in this case, you could say it was lazy writing, but of course not in this movie because there's no accidents in this movie.
Think about it here. He is going to an animation studio, and animation's an offshoot of comic books, where comic books, especially Marvel, would use pseudonyms like Peter Parker.
The alliteration.
Why not?
The doubling of the names. I think that we understand he's a strong personality, and
Absolutely.
I think that's what the movie's trying to.
That's
tell
not
us.
lazy writing at all.
No, in this case, it's just extra, enrichment for the viewer.
Well, in many ways, what he's saying but not saying is your journey of self-discovery isn't complete yet.
No.
You need to go home and confront your father.
Right. I mean,
and confront where you came from.
It's just like in Star Wars when, Luke has to, confront Vader. We've seen this in stories before in all epic hero tales. This is a common element.
Yeah. So I think we're getting a little bit too far. So Gordy encounters Mr. Davidson, shows him his drawings, the peek behind the veil, as we talked about.
Right.
And it's almost like as you said, John, he's too early to
he's not ready yet.
his resolution.
People don't get it.
No.
It's kind of like early Frank Zappa in many ways. Like people didn't get it at first.
No. So he tells him to so eloquently quit his shitty cheese job, and focus on becoming who he has always been meant to be, which is an animator.
Right.
So he quits his job and travels in his LeBaron back home. And this is at the point where he is told by Dave Davidson to become the animals. And this is kind of that getting down to that animalistic reptilian brain that we all have.
Right.
And he decides to find a dead deer on the highway. And, just like the Native Americans before us and the other indigenous peoples, he becomes the animal.
Well, Dave Davidson said become the animal. Like,
yes, he does.
This is the directive that he was meant to do it. And again, I think that the element of costuming, of the mask, it's really important. He's trying to understand the world in a new way, but at the same time, he's still not ready to be himself. He's hiding
trying
still.
to be Gordy the deer, not Gordy the human.
Right. He wants to understand the deeper, givens of the animal kingdom, and like I said, he's still not ready to be Gordy yet, and that's what this scene means.
Well, we all have spirit animals, and I think the film boldly addresses that.
Yeah, well, hey, we can't really say spirit animal just because that is kind of appropriating culture, and a movie of this stature would never.
No, it would never.
Culture,
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
It would never do that.
I would say like your familiar.
It's his connection to his primal, his primal self, primal rage, even.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
his primal symbol, possibly.
And there really is kind of a clash between industrial and nature when the semi truck hits him at 40 miles per hour.
If not more,
that would normally kill a man.
Oh my gosh. Well, you see, on the regular road, if a semi hits a deer like that, there's nothing left but just fur and meat, but I think what the movie is telling us is that, Gordy is having his moment in the world, and he's meant to go on, and he's meant to be an animator, and that's why he was spared by his own
I think it's also
animal.
a matter of, at this point in time, when Gordy puts on the guise of the animal, that he becomes almost the Ubermensch, if you will, the superior man, and is able to withstand that truck that hits him.
Right.
Only by becoming the animal can you become who you are meant to be.
And in any other film, it would almost seem like supernatural, but it's so grounded in reality because the rest of this film has just so much symbolism and so many metaphors for us to just feast upon that I don't think that, there's any question of that,
Well, his spirit animal protectors in many ways, like when you're tied to nature, the way say like Native Americans are, there is almost something spiritual and magical about that, and he's kind of overcome with that because he's so willing to be open to just forgiving everything that he was
Right.
in order to be reborn.
And some of those roots, I mean, I don't know that it's a impossible connection to kind of say that this is possibly a tribute to some of his Canadian roots. I mean, it's very wild there. And know, the idea of having, such a close connection with nature, that possibly could be something that, that Tom took from his real life to bring to the movie.
So at this point, he does make it, when he also encounters the same horse that he had masturbated
Right.
on the way to Los Angeles and decides to eat while watching, which I guess that can kind of be viewed as, almost a critique on the relationship between viewers and entertainment.
Sure.
Well, also he is now like a pack animal. Like deer are carnivores. So the idea is that he is eating meat while watching, another animal in its weakest state, like while they're
most vulnerable.
Vulnerable, yeah.
And I think that's what this is really about, is vulnerability.
And at any time, like he could do whatever he wanted to them or anyone else, because he's gotten that level of power.
Well, like Brian said, Ubermensch. I mean, that's so plain,
Ubermensch.
Which he kind of almost comes like the Jedi back home when he has to approach his father.
Well, now here I want to talk to you guys about this scene, because when he does come home, there is a huge discussion about what they're having for dinner versus what Gordy wants to have for dinner. Now he just wants his chicken sandwich.
A chicken burger.
And I just want to know, like, what do you guys think that symbolizes?
I think it symbolizes birth.
Okay.
Because if we think about it, what does come first, the chicken or the egg?
Okay. So I guess they're saying chicken in this case.
Chicken in this case.
Gosh, I didn't even
and him consuming the chicken burger is consuming the life of that chicken or multiple chickens.
Now, do you think that his father's sending him away from the table and saying, like, you can't eat with us? Do you think that's a comment on evolution versus creationism?
No, I think it is more of a comment on the disappointment of everything that Gordy, a promising young adult, has at the moment abandoned.
You are no longer welcome in our baby boomer dream.
Okay.
Yes, you have disrupted
I
our
see.
Suburbicon so much
that so this is
I
a comment on the boomer generation.
How to handle you any longer.
Oh yeah. Clash of cultures here. You've got one generation, class of generation. Yes, one generation that says you need to go to work and eat roast beef.
Yeah.
And one generation,
the American dream, right?
that just wants to eat chicken burgers and skateboard and eat sausages with
draw
pianos.
cats. Yeah. And Elaine, when he first gets home, speaking of the generational rift, there's a small child that runs up to his car, trips, injures himself violently.
Oh, right.
Because, that's that younger generation crying out, please help us. Please don't fail us. We are the future.
I think it's really a comment on student loans.
Really?
Even back then?
God,
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, we've established that this is so far ahead of its time.
I'm
John.
just,
I mean, that's not a question.
I think it is the older generation, even like you could say these are the Gen Xers, if you will, who nowadays seem to basically denigrate millennials as not hard workers and having it too easy. And you have this whole movie has an issue with generation. Rip Torn's generation criticizes Tom Green's generation, and Tom Green's generation continually hurts the young boys' generation, which would be the millennial generation. So I really do think it's about student loans.
Well, it eventually leads to them being outside and messing around on with skateboards.
I believe it is called
homemade ramp.
a half pipe.
Yep.
Yes,
Yeah.
a half pipe.
And
A dual-ended ramp.
talk about callbacks, because his friend gets a horrific injury to the point where a bone is protruding from the leg, and he calls back to his animal-like instincts where he licks it in an attempt to try to heal.
That's true.
He's cleaning it.
Yeah, and not just
again,
healing him,
and getting,
but healing everything around him.
And I feel like kind of getting to a more primal time when that was a natural thing to do. Now, of course, it looks so out of place, but that just reminds the viewer how conventionalized we've become and how unlikely to accept new ideas that we are.
Well, I think if we think of like Eisenstein's, montages, it's very similar to that type of cutting.
True.
Isn't it?
That's very true. Yeah.
It's really the idea that monsters wear many masks.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you don't realize you're the own monster till you're forced to see your own reflection. Yeah. And Tom is not willing to lie to himself in these many ways, but which leads him to go to the hospital where he meets his love interest.
Yes, a woman named Betty.
Right. Played by Marissa Coughlan.
Oh, okay.
Who, I thought that, this was a great role for her. I'd seen her in other things at the time. She hasn't worked much lately. But I feel like once you've done a movie,
you don't need
is
to
as rich
go
as
any
this,
further than this. I mean,
it's
this
true.
is a career-making film. Okay, so
Agreed.
Gordy encounters Betty, and Betty is flipping creamers.
Because her whole life is in limbo.
Absolutely.
It's flipping up and down.
Absolutely. I mean, she's working as a doctor, and also as a rocket scientist, and also as a paraplegic.
No, just para.
Sorry. Yeah, paraplegic.
You said para. I'm sorry, I heard the wrong thing.
Yes, a paraplegic. So she's not working as one; she is one.
Right.
But it's like her life is in limbo.
Well, and that duality, I think, is so important to mention too, just because she is differently abled. This is a different take on ableness, and I think that this really says a lot about Tom Green as an artist and as an author in this point where he makes some really strong comments about that, and I think that we all need to take a close look at that and see what that kind of interprets like for him, because he obviously had a strong hand in this.
Well, not only when he later goes on a date with her and hits her in the legs with a kendo stick, essentially, she can't feel anything in her legs, and that's the only thing that helps her feel alive. And I think that has more to do.
He makes her feel alive.
Right. Like, that's the emptiness in her soul. Like, she needs to be violently shook out of that.
I think a lot of people on the surface will take this as she can't feel below her legs because of her differently ableness. But I think, as you said, it really is, it's not her legs, it's her soul. And when Gordy hits her with that kendo stick, he is reinvigorating her soul.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
I honestly thought that she was going to get up and walk because of their connection that they had. It would have probably been silly.
Well, it would have been silly.
That would have been over the top.
Yeah.
Little heavy.
But I wouldn't have been surprised if because love kind of conquers all.
Well, you want that for her. He's crafted these strong characters that you really care about, and that's what it comes down to. You want that for her so badly you can almost see it.
Well, and then she offers to pleasure him via his, once again, ding dong.
Right. The offer
pushes,
of oral.
He pushes away.
Right. Again, a huge comment on male, the male's place in the world, on, male fragility, I think, and what society tells us.
Now, I do want to get to one scene here that is before the date.
Oh, okay.
And that is the one of some people would say, I know a lot of critics who dislike this film, say that it's one of the most unpleasant scenes, and that is the
making of life.
The making of life.
Yeah.
Right.
The birth scene.
Absolutely. We have to address it.
Yeah. So Gordy goes to see his friend who's been injured, and is supportive of him, wants to make sure that he is all right. And at the same time, the woman next to him is giving birth, and there are no doctors around. So Gordy,
as to be expected,
yes.
that's such a comment on our medical field.
Oh,
there's never a doctor
never.
when you're in trouble.
Absolutely.
Greatest country on earth, and there's never a doctor.
Absolutely. Well, and too, I was seeing more themes of, the American healthcare crisis and insurance problems and stuff. It wouldn't even matter if he was a doctor. A lot of Americans don't get the care that they need. And I feel like this was really a comment on that as well.
Well, Gordy being the supreme being as he is.
Right.
He puts on the guise, just as he put on the guise of the animal.
Again,
he puts on the guise.
The elements of costuming
doctor.
are so strong in this film.
He puts on that guise and becomes the doctor and delivers the baby in a, some would say, unorthodox way.
Sure. But
well, it's an existential utopia. I am everything and nothing.
Right. And this is everything and nothing, this moment,
I applaud this movie for showing the reality of childbirth. Like the excessive amount of blood, the
distractions of people banging on drums,
right? Because doing kind of an old an older generation's song of birth, of life, of renewal of the season. You know,
it's almost a pagan scene, really.
Right.
You know, calling back our most ancient ancestors of organized people. You know,
I think it would be fair to say this movie is a compliment to every religion and no religion.
Yes, I agree.
And that's very difficult to do, to show respect, but still detachment of all of different cultures and beliefs.
So Gordy being the supreme being,
He has become the doctor.
He's become the doctor.
Yep.
He brings life to the child who is not crying. He is able to bite into the umbilical cord and frees the child from the trap of the womb.
Such a primal visual metaphor. You know?
And it is shown in all its beautiful glory. And he spins the child around through the tether of life,
right,
and is able to bring this child back from death, so to speak.
He's shaking this child, like saying, "You must live, not conventionally. You must live who you are."
Absolutely.
And don't be afraid to be who you are.
Yeah, it's another assertion of self.
Gay, straight, transgender, whatever you end up being, that is who you are. Once again, extremely before his time.
Progressive. Very progressive.
Sense. And then later he wears that umbilical cord, because I think what he's saying is, I myself am reborn after I've left Hollywood now.
I am life, you are life.
Exactly.
We are all life.
Yeah.
I like to think that it's just a reminder, almost kind of like in Star Wars, Boba Fett, he carries the braids of Wookiees that he has conquered. And I think that, Gordy, being a supreme master of energy and of the guises that he puts on, brings that as a sense of pride.
Like he conquered death.
He conquered death. And so he wears it duct taped to his stomach.
But it still knows how fragile life is.
Absolutely.
Because that baby almost didn't make it.
Absolutely.
Without him, it absolutely wouldn't have.
Absolutely.
Right.
So
John, you've caught us up now to his date.
Yeah.
Now, how is everything else in his life going at this point? We need to break this down a little bit here.
Well, he's naturally having some issues with his father.
Sure.
Where his father wants him to fall under that convention that we spoke of. He wants him to fall into the 9-to-5 slavery, where he can't be contained. He's unbridled.
Oh, are you going to talk about Backwards Man? I was really hoping for your thoughts on this.
Well, it reminds me of the Beatles song "Nowhere Man."
Okay,
making all his nowhere plans for nobody. And how we just go through life living without understanding why we're living.
Right,
because we are the backwards man.
Yeah. Well, and too, I think it's just such a beautiful visual element, because where are we going really? You can face one way, but if you put your clothes facing the other way, wouldn't that be more accurate, where nobody really gets anywhere? It's a comment on the rat race, isn't it?
Right. Well, Henry David Thoreau once said, "I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, and not when I came to die discovered I had not lived." And I really think that's what Gordy is saying in, Portland. I want to live deliberately, and not when I come to die discovered I have not lived. And that's his mocking of people who are unwilling to try to turn things around, to go 180, to try something different.
Well, what's interesting is his father finds him wearing the suit and in the guise of the backwards man. And he unfortunately goes against his superior moral standing and does lie to his father and tells him that he does have a job, which he does not. He does not have a job, other than the job of being an animator that he is, tasked himself with being.
Right.
So he lies to his father.
Still showing the fragileness that we all have with the patriarchy
Yes.
that we have to deal with even our parents.
One, too, I think that if you look at this scene for what it is, you can really understand, because, we alluded to it, but, Gord does have a chant that he does when he's in the suit. "I'm the backwards man, the backwards man. I can walk backwards as fast as you can." He's clearly comparing himself to his father in this, brief poetry.
He's wearing his father's suit.
Right. So obviously I think it makes a lot of sense if you really look into what he's saying as well.
So he lies to his father, and he, tells him that he has a job in the technology field.
It's a night job, but still a good job.
Still a good job. And he is able to then it translates to another scene with Betty in which he, again is caning her with that kendo stick.
Right.
And expresses again the in the face of the male patriarchy, his desire to forego these sexual pleasures.
Right. He wants
that she's
to court
offered.
her.
He wants to court her like a lady.
Sure.
And take her out to dinner.
Right.
So
You are not an object to me.
no.
In society may even see you as less because they're so backwards in thinking that you're less because you're in a wheelchair.
Yes.
But I see you for exactly what you are, which
Yes.
is this beautiful spirit.
A jewel,
Right,
if you
right.
will, which
Right.
calls back later in the film.
That's true.
So
they're at this fancy restaurant.
They go to
now.
a fancy restaurant.
I feel like this movie's so rich we could really get bogged down. So I wonder if we should just kind of
I
do
think,
a couple broad strokes
think
at
we
least
do.
here. So
we do.
so they go out to dinner and it's all kind of a ruse. Gord has brilliantly set up a system to make it seem like he's receiving calls from his new job. He tells Betty that he's doing stocks, and I think it's interesting when you see the kind of the pyramid of his lies. He tells his father a different lie than he tells Betty. And again, like I think you just really go back to the whole backwards man thing and kind of understand that like. At this point, like Gord doesn't really know who he is or which lie feels the best to him.
Right.
And that's I think the inherent sense of self where he knows that all of this is wrong and all of this is meaningless. So,
Well, and I think what's such a nice touch is the name of the restaurant is Fancy Restaurant.
oh, right.
Simple, to the point.
And kind of meta, right?
Well, it's
Very,
like,
very.
it's almost like, I'm sorry, The Old Man in the Sea. I'm drawing a blank here. Ernest Hemingway.
Oh,
Very
sorry.
much in
I didn't know what you wanted.
Ernest Hemingway's writing.
Right.
It's simple. It's to the point. It's precise.
there isn't too much on the
You know,
page.
and this
Absolutely.
leads to his father's at the restaurant too, and this leads to a huge confrontation
Mm-hmm.
where the older generation is fighting. And you see this
Right.
a lot with our current political landscape where the older generation is just desperately clinging on, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people said that's how Trump became president. Just please don't leave us behind. And Gordy gets onto a bar and starts shooting water in the air, which could be some kind of sexual imagery saying,
Right.
this is rebirth. This is anew. This is our time.
And
he
again, that
he cakes his father with that water.
Yeah. Well, and again, the young child that we saw before, he also, again, gets hurt in this scene.
Cries out
A
again.
bystander generation.
Again, like, don't forget about my generation. Don't forget about what the future means for me.
That's right.
It's very important that he's in this scene.
Eventually this does lead to family therapy,
Right.
where
Yes.
there is a revelation that a character who was purposely kind of ignored in the movie, which is Freddy, which is
brother.
Gordy's brother, was kind of ignored by society because it wasn't until this moment that we find out the Rip Torn has been a sexual predator to Freddy this whole time.
And now, do you think that this is going into the microcosm of Gord's own false memories? And that's why he accuses his father? Is it that he can't bear to face himself as a man and has to make his father a monster? Or do we think that there's actually some credence to these allegations? Because to have a movie where you falsely accuse someone of sexual assault would say things about sexual assault that would be appalling and would be an absolute aberration of a film.
Perhaps
And that's certainly not the case here.
No, not the case at all.
perhaps that not everything is what it appears to be.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
think that's why he makes an escape in the scene. He doesn't leave out the door.
Yeah.
He
Oh,
makes
that's so
an
significant.
escape.
You're-
He
Yeah.
busts out
Right.
of the lies.
And he
breaks
gets,
through 'em.
He gets out without shedding any blood. I think that's very
Yes.
important.
Mm-hmm.
Because this
And-
movie's not shy about showing us blood, so
No.
this has to be a symbol.
Absolutely.
And then Freddy is forced into a home for abused children,
Yes.
where they watch very violent movies. And,
Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Another
Yeah.
classic.
Yeah,
A
and what
very
does this
classic.
have to say about violence as compared to sex? You
Right.
can get away with a lot of violence in media, but just not the sexual end of things. So,
Or does it say that violence in our media fuels sexual perversions?
immoral behavior begets immoral behavior.
It's true. And again, we see it here where Eddie K. Thomas is the one who plays Freddy, and he vehemently denies the allegations, and says that they're not true. He wears that veil of shame. And again, we must look at the more important, metaphorical ramifications, because again, to portray being an abuse victim as a shameful act, as something that you should be ashamed of, would be completely irresponsible if a film did that.
Yes.
So we know that that's not the case here,
Not the
because
case.
this film is just a progressive piece of art beyond its time.
Absolutely. Now, at this point, we get one of the pinnacle scenes, the birth scene, the restaurant scene, and this one really kind of do solidify this. And this is the "Daddy, would you like some sausage?" scene.
Right.
And this is
the idea of juggling everything,
Yes.
because his love interest suggests that he tries to draw and has something to eat and does music all at the same time. I mean, again, a metaphor for the impossible demands of the working person in today's society when you go after a dream like that.
And then, of course, I looked at it as, just as you said, it's a critique on the amount of pressure that our society puts on young people to hold down jobs, to have friendships, to network, to do all this. And that also is being put down by male patriarchy.
Right. Well,
By
again,
the previous generation.
I mean, don't you think it's a cry for like an intergenerational kind of coming together? We've talked about the rift between generations. Like when he says, "Daddy, would you like some sausage?"
Yes.
I mean, that's elder care. I mean, as you get to a certain age, you have to take care of your aging parents, and
Now,
that's another pressure.
He eats the
you know?
sausage.
He does.
So does that mean he is consuming the older generation?
Or does it mean that he's trying to bridge the gap?
Well, this
okay.
is Gordy's
Interesting take.
This is Gordy's breaking point, because when his father destroys this art installation that he's created,
Yes, the
it
sausage
forces
pulley system.
The
it
performance
forces
art.
his arms up in the air like he is a ventriloquist dummy, like he is a puppet
Who's
on some
puppet,
strings.
right?
Who's
Father
Totally.
puppet.
controls
And-
the strings.
Yeah, and are we the puppet?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That has to be raised here.
Has to be asked as well.
So eventually he does travel back to California.
We're missing a couple parts here.
Okay.
We're missing a couple parts here. I think there's a couple parts that are very important to hit before he goes back to California. And that is that, Rip Torn's character, the father, destroys his half pipe.
Right.
And, basically encourages his mother to have sex with strange men,
Gord
with
does.
Greeks.
Gordy does,
Gord
yeah.
tells,
Gord, his own
tells his
mother,
own mother to have sex
to
with other men.
have relations with other men outside of the marital bed.
And you were going to say Greek men, which obviously
Yes, Greek men.
Where was the Enlightenment? Where was the first great thinkers of our world? Greece.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They're
Right.
they're pulling references to Homer and, other storytellers.
Well, even
So
just
much rich symbols in
Socrates, Plato,
Yes.
Greek
Greek men. And
very deep.
What he's saying is that his mother should embrace the culture of the Greeks through her vagina.
Right. And thereby become enlightened.
Yes, absolutely.
because
So-
she is a vessel of life,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
course.
as in a way he is too, by helping birthing children earlier.
Of course.
So at this point, the world has seemed to be crumbling down for Rip Torn's character, and he reaches his breaking point
Right.
in which he becomes the self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. I mean, he
Of
lives to become
the
see
allegation.
himself become the villain, of course.
Where
And-
he requests that Gordy have sexual intercourse with his buttocks.
Yeah. Yeah.
He says, "Just give it to me, like let's get it over with."
Yes, he says very, very nonchalantly, fuck me. Do you want to fuck me?
Right. And
Is that
this
what you said? Fuck me.
And I think that this is just, a comment on what a descent into madness would be like, for his character, again, the pressure of society on the boomer generation. I think that these are all really important metaphors that we need to keep in mind when watching this movie.
Well, I mean, there's something to be said about the conquering of the father in myth, and the idea of that they say that men want to kill their fathers, but then have sex with their mothers,
Right.
on a deep psychological level.
Oedipal. Complex.
What if that was switched? What if it was all on one? What if Gordy was to sexually dominate his father? And what kind of metaphor is that, saying that, like, now I've conquered you sexually, like I am now in control, I am now the father.
Right. And it would be the changing over of the general power.
Changing of the guard.
To his generation, passing it from the boomers and to, Generation X.
So at this point, he does he loses his wife. Father loses the wife. She does.
Yeah,
loses
Gord's mom
everything,
does
yeah.
leave.
Does leave and ends up with a man named Shaq. no real reason why, but I mean, we assume that she did get enlightenment through the Greeks and ended up, with Shaq romantically.
Yeah. Obviously this isn't as deeper as some of the other things, but I think that there is a chance that they cast Shaq because by his sheer height, he would probably have a large penis.
Oh, I see.
The idea is that this might be somebody that can actually satisfy her in many ways.
Let's take that again. I don't know if you can hear, but I could hear you laugh, Brian.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
That's fine. No, dude, I don't know how I'm keeping a straight face.
All right. Are you ready?
And so with Shaq, go ahead, John.
Yeah. 3, 2, 1.
And this isn't necessarily as deep as some of the other things in the film, but I think that she ends up with Shaq just because it allows her to have a man purely by his size alone, that he would have, a very large penis.
Right.
Which would allow her to actually have the gratification. They use the symbol of sex, but also through life that she's been missing
that's right.
with somebody like Rip Torn, that whole time.
Well, again, I mean, it goes back to several other metaphors that we've kind of been able to break down, throughout the film. The goal is enlightenment. The goal is gratification in life. And again, we come back to the ding dong. It's a large penis. It's something that can be fulfilling, but it's also a metaphor for a greater calling in life. If we take this movie for the metaphor that it is, she could have found a new career or something, and Shaq's ding dong could just be a metaphor for that.
He called it earlier in the film. Ding dong, like almost like a doorbell, like open the door for a ding dong. And now she has Shaq's ding dong for, penis, however you would want to phrase
and like I said,
it.
whether that's like the flesh form or not, like it could still be a really strong metaphor.
And let us point out that Rip Torn said, do you want to fuck me? Not, can I fuck you? Because he knows of his inadequacy.
Sure. And I think
he doesn't have the quote unquote ding dong.
Right. And I think that they make that so plain throughout the film that this is just a major stepping stone of the greater meanings that this film has to offer.
This is a fantastic discussion, but we do have to go forward.
Okay.
Yeah, guys. Sorry.
So,
I mean, can we?
I think we have to talk about the end.
Got to do so. Yeah, got to do some.
We have to talk about the end. So Gord does travel back to Los Angeles. He encounters Dave Davidson.
Yep, having completed his hero's journey.
He's discovered that he can create characters with stories.
Yep.
He creates a cartoon called Zebras in America about centaur zebras.
Right.
Basically, expression of his own life.
Right.
Well, and this is a brilliant commentary on slavery.
How so?
They come from Africa. They are brought over here against their will. And it says, we are going to make the best of this, even though you tried to contain us, which once again references to containment, control, and that we're going to break out. And I think that's why the movie is predominantly a white cast.
Oh. Okay.
Because it's making such a reference by only casting white people.
Boy, I don't know, John. I truly think that the key here is that it's, Zebras in America.
Yeah.
Again, I know I keep saying it, but I do think it is a commentary on class, because they're rejected by humans for their zebra parts, and they're rejected by zebras for their human parts. I think it's a comment on middle class. They're not rich, but they're not poor.
I think there's many layers to the zebras in America. I think
they're dreamers.
They're dreamers.
Yeah.
I think there are many layers. I think whoever is watching this film can glean so much from the zebras in America.
Yeah.
But I mean, we could talk all day. We could have a whole episode on zebras in America.
And they cut him a $1 million check for this idea.
Yes, they do. So he has become the animator. He's been able to usurp the consumerism of the old generation of have the cheese sandwich job. And now he has become the animator with the $1 million. And what does he do with that $1 million?
He immediately gets rid of it because he is not in this for money.
He's the socialist hero.
Yeah. And as you mentioned earlier, the jewels, he rents a helicopter. He gives an expensive gift to his
jewels, a bag of what look like plastic jewels, but we all know
it's $150,000 worth of jewels.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, he makes that perfectly clear.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So
they're $150,000 of jewels.
Right.
And
right.
Almost kind of a callback to the Marlon Brando film.
On the Waterfront.
What's it? Yeah,
Godfather.
the Marlon Brando film Last Tango in Paris.
Oh, of course.
Oh, yes.
Where they get to their animalistic roots in that film as well. She says, all I want to do is, in her words, suck your cock.
Right.
She's saying, I don't care about money. I don't care about materialistic
No.
things. I just want to be one with you.
Well, I want the essence of what makes you man.
Yeah.
Right.
Through his ding dong.
She's requesting it. She is requesting to have his essence, to make love via the mouth. And
Through his ding dong.
yes,
Right.
once again, call back once again. Everything is connected in this movie.
The themes are so strong.
It's mathematical precision if you break down all the connecting points within the movie.
So his first journey back to being himself is he fulfills his love's interest by giving her the jewels and, presenting his relationship through his ding dong. And then he decides to take his eyes to his father himself. And he does this in a couple different ways. He does this first by putting his father to sleep. You could take this as putting the other generation to bed and taking
That's how I take it.
power and deciding I'm going to rule this household now. So he uses the money to buy military grade, which I have to think that has got to be a commentary on the military industrial complex.
Sure. Well,
He's
it's
feeding the system.
it's no question, like in the metaphor there, because he does go to the Middle East,
Well, he does that, but he puts on the guise, he put on the guise of the deer. He put on the guise of the doctor, the cheese sandwich worker. He's now become the military industrial complex.
Right.
Well, it's funny you should say that, 'cause the first time I saw this, I was like, "Well, what is this? Is this like a Tom Clancy thing now? Did I walk into a different movie?" It wasn't until like the 7th, 8th, 9th time that I saw this that I actually, Brian, I realized exactly what you're saying. That,
Right. Yeah.
this is what Eisenhower warned us about in his farewell address, in 1960.
And this is a movie that you really have to sit with multiple times
Absolutely.
to get through every layer. This is a movie that you can see so many times and get something new every single time.
Good luck
especially with this.
trying to get through this in one go.
Well, I mean, there is a class at Princeton that covers this, so that
believe
people
so.
can really
Yes.
understand.
So he puts his father to bed and then uses the rest of his money. The money that he has just gotten from Dave Davidson.
of $1 million.
$1 million. And spends that money to transport part of his father's house.
Right. Just
To
part.
Pakistan.
Just part. Very interesting.
In an elaborate thing that most people would consider that somewhat moronic, but
If you don't fully understand.
If you do not fully understand this.
Excessive, certainly, but I mean, extreme measures are needed to get this point across. I
Some
think.
people might say that there is no point to transporting part of your father's house to Pakistan. Okay? I like to think that in a pre-9/11 world, this is showcasing what's to come.
Sure.
We've transported America to the Middle East. He's transported his father's generation, a generation that eventually will send us to war
True.
to the Middle East.
True.
Yeah, we're not that far removed from war, which
No.
he clearly saw coming.
He
as
saw
well.
it coming.
But guys,
Visionary.
But guys, who else is from the Middle East? Jesus.
Okay.
So
Tell
I
me
think
more.
there's a lot of connection here to the enlightenment of all mankind. He's saving his father in the way that if you are a Christian or Catholic, that Jesus saved us.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah. And what he does is he wakes his father up by, and a callback once again to the horse earlier, he wakes his father up by essentially, pardon the crassness of it, he pleasures an elephant to cause almost like a hose
Yeah.
to go off.
Well, he
And-
doesn't wake his father up with that.
right.
No,
Yeah, his father's chasing
his
him.
father's chasing him because as an older generation, he does not want to be in war.
And he does not want to be suddenly in the Middle East either.
No.
You know, I would
Right,
say.
right.
No.
And I
It's-
think with the elephant scene, with this giant, I don't want to be crass, but like the spurt of ejaculate,
A giant ding dong.
right. Tom is saying as an director, as an auteur, he's saying we need to choose life. We need to envelope ourselves in life. This is the essence of life.
Don't cocoon yourself in your backwards thinking.
Right, but instead embrace, the fluid, if you will,
You need
of
to
life, the fluidity.
embrace the ejaculate of life.
Right. I mean,
Well, it's like a
'cause-
cocoon, isn't it? And he comes out a butterfly on the other end.
right. It's transformative,
It does.
Yeah.
of course.
Because he even says, as he is covered in elephant ejaculant in the middle of the desert. He says that he is finally proud of his son.
Right.
And that, as a
he's
callback,
rebirthed. He's rebirthed.
It calls back to our first time meeting the family unit in that bus depot, a point of transportation for some people might say the soul, and says that I am proud.
Right.
Of
And
you.
that's the comment on generationally, like, we're going to inherit the earth.
Now, normally movies would end there.
No.
but not this movie. It's, there's a lot of saying that like the Beatles broke the rules by not doing 4/4 time with music.
Right.
They might do 4/5 4 time. Like this movie says, no, we're not ending here. Life doesn't end here.
Life stops.
Right.
Life doesn't end.
Right.
It's true.
And they are kidnapped. They're held as prisoners of war. And eventually they are brought back home as the heroes that they
Changed.
are. Changed men. And their whole appearance changes. Now, some might say because of time. They've been there a long time, so their hair grew out and then they grew beards.
Right,
but I think it's also a reflection of that they are changed people.
Well, I mean, your soul is going to change in that amount of time, and that's what the outward reflection is. This is a lot about reflection and appearance.
And they stepped out of the suburbs. They saw the real world. They saw other aspects of life. And there even is a commentary of there's a sign in the audience when they get back to America that says, when is this movie going to end? And I think what they're saying is, when is this movie going to end so we can start taking these principles and these lessons that we learn and live lives ourselves?
See, I like to
Agreed,
think that
agreed.
sign might mean, when is this phase of life going to end?
I'm inclined to agree with Brian on this one.
And when is the next phase of life going to begin?
I think we're both saying the
when
same
are
thing.
the rest of us going to get covered in our own elephant ejaculant?
To have our own self-discovery.
Of course. When will we be reborn?
That's right. When will we be reborn
When will we
through
be
the
reborn?
elephant
Of
ejaculant
course.
of life?
And do we need somebody like Gordy to birth us
It's
like
true.
he did the baby earlier? Or
It's
can we
true.
birth ourselves?
That's right.
It's true.
So that is Frederick Got Fingered.
It
Well,
is.
at the very end.
Yeah, am I missing a part?
Oh, well, at the very, very end of the movie, the child basically gets disintegrated by a propeller. Now, he doesn't
Right,
die. We
right.
hear him. We hear him.
The
He's
spirit
saying,
of that generation.
Yeah,
Exactly,
I'm
exactly.
going to be okay. But once again, another form of liquid covering people.
Again.
Rebirth again.
Agreed. Agreed.
It's very
yeah,
deep.
that is Freddy Got Fingered, as Brian would say. Frederick Got Fingered.
Yeah,
Yes.
one of our favorite films in the show, which is weird because unilaterally we do not agree. Like
I
this.
think most people would have thought that we would have hated this movie.
Well, so many critics and a lot
And
of fans
despised
did.
it.
Yeah.
You know?
Because they didn't fully understand it. They didn't break it down to its greater context and say, what is this film really about?
Well, I mean, I don't want to be mean either, but we have 6 film degrees among the 3 of us, and I'm just wondering if some of these critics just didn't
They just didn't get it.
They just weren't immersed in film as pedagogy to kind of understand the greater meaning.
I think they were scared. I think they were scared of how the movie made them feel.
I mean, that could be true too. Honestly.
So Lane, where can they find you on the Twitter machine?
On Twitter, you can find me at LA_Croft.
John, where can they find you at?
You can find me at the Unreal J Wolves.
You can find me at Brian Condon. I also run the Psycho Show page. Be sure to like us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google+, at Psycho Show. You can also find us on the Epicast Network at epicastnetwork.com. If you have a favorite movie or question you want to throw away, you want to talk to us about your experiences watching Frederick Got Fingered and illuminate us on some points that we might have missed, you can contact us at cinemapsychoshow.com. Make sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. Send us a rate, send us a review. Also, be sure to check out our newsletter, Psychos Nation, and sign up for that. And you can catch a new episode available every Sunday. And now here's a message from Orson Welles.
This is Orson Welles, ladies and gentlemen, out of character to assure you that the Freddy Got Fingered episode has no further significance than the holiday offering it was intended to be. The Cinema Psycho's own podcast version of dressing up in a sheet and jumping out of a bush and saying, gotcha. So goodbye, everybody, and remember the terrible lessons you've learned tonight. And if your doorbell rings and nobody is there, why, it's not the spirit of Tom Green as a filmmaker. It's only April Fools.
Epicast.